Are we ready, Patrick? Yep, we're good. I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, well, first up, we have the Hedstrom variance. You guys want to chat about it, or should we just run with what we got?
Well, unless you have any questions.
Okay.
I made this highly detailed, which I spent quite a bit of time on. So if there's anything left to your
No.
imagination.
I'm wondering, do our commissioners have any questions on this variance? It felt pretty straightforward to me, but if any commissioners have any other thoughts.
I don't have any questions. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
I agree.
Okay, all right. And then going through our findings, it definitely is in harmony with what's already happening in the area. It's definitely in line with the comprehensive plan, and it is not an unreasonable use. And all of our properties in Grand Marais, I would suggest, are unique, and so therefore oftentimes do need an adjustment here or there. And it will not change the character of the locality at all.
Did we get any feedback from anybody on this?
That's a good question. We did get one comment, but was that for this variance or was that for the EDA?
We got a person stopped by, wanted to look at the plans and liked what they saw. There's a
Okay.
neighbor.
Okay, very good.
I'd make a motion to approve the Hedstrom variance request.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. They'll go on to the council.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, guys.
Now we get to
Carry forward.
continue.
See ya at the council.
See you later.
See ya.
Take care.
All right, now on to the rezoning of the EDA. A lot to go over here. And did you want to present anything, or should we just go ahead, Jason, and see if we have any questions?
Whatever you prefer. We can
Okay.
do that. I think folks are familiar with the property.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone over this property a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like the ask makes sense. One question I did have for Mike was just wondering if it was R1 before it was BDA, because that would make it even easier to see how this could be that way. But I mean, even the lay of the land makes it seem like it's a pretty reasonable switch and may make it more useful. But do commissioners have questions that we should ask at this point?
Multifamily, does that still have to come before planning and zoning with plans?
Yeah.
Is that through
Yes.
conditional use?
If it's 7
Yeah.
or more units.
No, if it's more than two, like all of our multiple unit options are conditional in the R1 zone.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we will, I mean, so we're getting a little sneak peek, but really the decision is whether to move it to R1. Brandon?
No, I don't.
I mean,
I
you've
don't
looked
have
at this a
any.
lot.
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
familiar. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I wonder, except for maybe the question I had was when there was, and maybe Mary would know, or Mike, you'd probably know too, but wasn't there at some point, this is the one that's been kind of tossed around oftentimes with, that was assisted living. Wasn't at some point the Hamilton Housing also looked at this property?
Yeah.
And what was it the wetland issue is what, I mean, I know what killed the assisted living thing, but I'm wondering, so I guess I was surprised that this already hadn't been turned over away from kind of part of the business park. If there was, in the past, almost decade now, right, that it's been a few different entities have looked at it. So,
Yeah, I'd say 15 years.
okay,
And yeah, it's been 2 serious assisted living project looks at it and multiple multifamily concepts that
Mhm.
kicked the tires on it. No one ever really came forward with a project
Okay.
to do that.
Gotcha.
There was never any zoning reason why those didn't move
Okay,
forward.
that's what I
There
did.
were always
Yeah,
economic
yeah.
reasons.
I think it just kind of dissipated and I never heard why, and so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously sometimes there's ways around that, but I didn't know if it was the zoning side of it. I was surprised that it was not R1 with,
Yeah, nobody ever had a
Got to that
project
point.
get far enough forward where they came and asked for rezoning or had any permitting or anything.
okay.
Okay.
I guess I'd say that I know, there would probably be some voice of like, against the idea of putting more R1 onto, or putting R1 adjacent to the Gunflint Trail. But I would just point out again that there is 15 to 20% of the undeveloped R1 zone already adjacent to the Gunflint Trail. And so I don't think that this really changes the character, you know what I mean? And again, to
Yeah.
the east, it's already R1. To the
Right.
south, there's a couple spots of, residential. So I think, yeah, do you want me to make a motion? Somebody else want to talk?
Did you have anything more to add?
Were there any comments on this one that you received?
Okay, then you go.
I would make a mo, do you want to do the findings? Do we have to do findings on this?
Yeah, they're a little different too.
Yeah, they are. And I think a lot of this was addressed in here, but I think like the one that usually catches me at least was a mistake in the zoning, but it isn't that, it's just that things have changed, that we do actually need, or in a place where we want more housing rather than not. And switching it to R1 doesn't automatically, as we know, make that true, but at least it makes it more likely.
You can make the case that it's a mistake in zoning too. There hasn't been any commercial projects look at that property. And
That's true.
multiple residential type uses have, so
Yeah.
we just got it wrong.
Yeah, go ahead,
Can I
Jason.
provide just a couple pieces of context for the request today, if it's helpful? One of the reasons we're asking for this thought about this is because of the 15 or so year history of folks coming forward with potentially housing-related residential projects on the site. As you can see, it's naturally sort of bifurcated from the rest of the business park.
Yeah.
I have ordered a wetland delineation for it. That's happening this week or next week, just to make sure that we're not going to run into any more surprises. But there wasn't a one done of several 10 years ago or so, and it's probably not substantially changed from that. But we're just making sure that that's still the case. And then the last thing is obviously right behind this property is that residential neighborhood. There's sort of a continuity of that block of residential. And
Right.
that neighborhood's aware of it, and one of our board members lives behind here, and he's talked to his neighbors, and they are all supportive of, subject to it not being a 10-story high-rise, they're supportive of residential use there.
Yeah.
How about
yeah.
a 4-story high rise?
I haven't asked about that.
Yeah, no, just already.
Not
We-
looking for it.
No. Okay. Yeah. I didn't hear that. There shall exist a clear public need. I think we talked about that, definitely need more housing. Yeah, and I mean, like you just pointed out, yes, like where it is, how it's located, definitely leads it to being more of an R1 in that case. And this is not down zoning.
It is down zoning.
Is that down zoning?
Yeah.
Going to the R1? Really?
Yeah.
I guessed that with my assumption when I rolled in.
I know it's weird because our economy says that residential is what's hot, but the value
Oh.
of a commercial property can really be quite a bit higher. So to go from commercial to residential is down zoning.
Okay,
But the EDA, the property owner is asking for it, so I think by definition, they think it's reasonable. Will be able to put it to reasonable use.
yeah, and again, it was.
Nobody else is.
And a vacant entity, like government entity owned property, doesn't pay anything in taxes, right? I mean, like above value, I mean, that raw land, even in a commercial state, as raw, in theory, as if there was something of residential was being able to be developed on it, that would
It's
have.
better for everyone. But in
Yeah.
this case, the question has to do with the fact that if you downzone a property against an owner's wish, that
Oh.
they've got a potential case against you.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But that's just not relevant to this question because
Okay.
it's the owner that's coming to ask you for this.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
I think,
I would
we are good.
make a motion to approve the EDA's rezoning proposal for the 2 parcels in the BDA business development area to R1 residential.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The new EDA director is with us too.
Hello.
Oh.
Anybody hasn't had a chance to meet her.
Hi.
Teresa, nice to meet everyone.
Hey,
Teresa.
Teresa.
Nice
meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And
I
now
was
we just
wondering
took
what's-
2 of your lots, and now what are you going to do for economic development?
That's a really loaded question. I'm gonna get my bearings first.
Okay.
When did you start?
Day after Labor Day.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh.
All right, well, welcome. Yeah.
Lots to be done everywhere else, so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jason. All right. Well, now
You
we
guys
get
gonna hang around for dumpsters?
Yeah.
Dumpster
That's what we're working on
Well, that's
next.
really riveting, but-
It's a good one.
As it turns out, no.
I don't know why not.
No, it's good. Well. So you went away, you came back.
I
and
just
said
couldn't write
we're-
anything, honestly.
You said we're
Maybe it's just my
fine.
fault, but I think we got this already, and it's just a procedural problem, not an ordinance problem.
Although it seemed, but wait, I mean, you did. You were saying here, though, that we were missing some language that we may have wanted not to.
I think my point I'm trying to make with the leftover ordinance changes that might need to be considered is that we refer to some performance criteria in some of our zones. It all refers back to what used to be the performance criteria in the C2 zone. And we've made 2 significant changes over time to the C2 zone to the point where the references aren't linking up anymore.
Okay.
And there's also, the last time we made changes, we actually removed some of the language. And now that here we are looking for performance standards for screening, that we actually had a little bit of language about and referenced to, and it's gone, that it's still worth a thought of if we go back and fix those references, do we want to add some of that screening language back in?
Okay.
I don't actually, I'm not suggesting that we do. I don't think that we'll need it for the question at hand. So for me,
Okay.
the issue of screening about dumpsters downtown is avoiding a nuisance. The nuisance being, I can see that messy dumpster and I don't want to have to look at it. And if it's not messy, I don't think it's a problem. And if it is messy, I don't care if it's screened, it's going to create a nuisance. And we have language in our ordinances already to deal with that issue, both preventively, because they have to have appropriate containers for garbage, and they have to have space for garbage, and some kind of plan for garbage. Our ordinance already requires that. But also after the fact, because we've got ordinance language that allows us to deal with nuisances, to go and require that they be corrected, or to correct them for them, and send a bill, or to take someone to court and have some sort of civil proceedings about it, or to have a criminal issue, because it's a criminal offense also to break some of these ordinances. So we've got a lot of tools that we can use to deal with if there are nuisances out there, that I don't see how we improve our situation by changing the ordinance. But I do think there's a couple of things we can do to improve our situation. So it's clearly an enforcement issue, that if we've got the tools, but there are still nuisances, we're not enforcing the ordinances that we have. And I think we need to improve our entry-level enforcement a little bit. We don't have a friendly way to say, hey, your dumpster's a mess, can you please clean it up? And I think we can add some tools, just some simple forms that people can see what the rules are, first of all, but also some simple communications that we can share with business owners up front beforehand, like this is what we're going to do if your dumpster is messy, but also when there's an issue, hey, did you know this is what the rule says, you're not doing these things, can you just take care of that for us? Before we have to get to the more difficult conversations. And then even before that happens, like I said, we require already that folks have provisions for the dealing of solid waste on their property. And I really like the way that it's written in our ordinance because it's not prescriptive. It doesn't say you need to have a 2-yard dumpster for every 1,000 square feet or something like that. It says you need to take care of it. Whatever that means, it's your responsibility, property owner, for whatever refuse you're creating, that you have provisions for it. So what we don't have is a way to know that people are doing that before they build. And I think that was one of the issues that was a part of the original conversation, is if somebody comes in, how do we know how they're going to deal with garbage? And we have forms that we use to do land use permits, and they can ask that question. And I think a quick refresh again of our land use permit application, get rid of some of the stuff on there that we never ask or care about, and add some of these things that we really want to know about. Show us where your dumpster is going to be, or where your trash is going to be, however you're planning on handling it. Show us where your propane tank is going to be if you have one. Show us where your parking spaces are going to be. I mean, we get to those questions in a situation where it's a conditional use or something else, and we really want to know, but
Not in general.
not
Yeah.
just administratively, unless there's some requirement involved. But I think there is a pretty short checklist of issues that are
I know that we talked
important to
about,
us.
I mean, I don't even know how long ago that was, but the the propane tank thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's pretty clear guidelines of what this fire marshal, or it wasn't the fire, somebody came up here with our firefighters, with Ben and somebody else to talk about that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And, you know,
Well, it's clear to a fire marshal what the guidelines are. We're not experts on it.
right.
But if it's a question that somebody wants to know what's happening, that's what our permitting is for, like to gather that data. And if we know it's a question that people are asking, we can ask up front too. So in this case, that's my suggestion, is we'll make the land use permit application, a requirement of it is you're showing us how you're dealing with refuse. And then that prevents a lot of issues. And then the next set of questions, and two in particular, like you don't have any trash hauling capability anywhere, and we don't know what's going on. And you end up using private, or some combination of public and private property, like you're into the alley or something else. Both of those are taken care of by you up front telling us where you're going to put your trash.
Sure.
Then we'll have the communications established to just tell people what the rules are about trash. You need to have adequate containers. You need to have a space for it on your property. It needs to be collected enough that it doesn't cause problems. And if it's ever a problem, you need to clean it up right away. Like, it's all common sense stuff, right? But we can find a way, I think, to summarize that, show people this is what the rules are. And then to build on that, have a communication that we'll use to say you're not complying and you need to make some changes, and here's what they are.
Yeah. And then would that be something, I don't know, that you would send out annually or something like, hey, remember, these are the rules?
Yeah, I don't know
I mean,
what the
I don't know,
schedule is
but
on that. I think we'll make
just
a push
thinking.
up front. We've got coalitions of business owners that we deal
Yeah.
with that can help us just get the word out on that. And it might be a seasonal thing, like we do seasonal snow plowing and seasonal parking and other things where we do have that annual push.
Right.
We could do that too, like, hey, summer's coming, everybody, let's remember, but I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I was just thinking.
right
like,
time is for
Once might not be enough, but it might be just part of the culture after a bit. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. So I think this is coming because of businesses, but what about private properties out there that maybe do have trash that's not in containers and not, it's just in bags on the front porch or something?
Yeah.
Now, are your suggested changes about administrative fees and fines or whatever cover that kind of instance also?
It definitely can. So the first step, here's what our rules are. Those rules don't say in the commercial zone you have to have adequate containers. They say you have to have adequate containers. And if you don't have any, and we define what that means, like very clearly, specifically, here's what you need to have for a container. That's in a residential zone too. I think most of the communications that we'll have to do in an organized way will be with the downtown, the commercial zones. But the same rules apply citywide. And if we have a case where someone is having a problem, we can use the same communication with them to say, hey, here's what the rules are and here's what's not being done, you need to fix that.
Yeah.
So administrative fines. This is something that when we changed we did recodification, right? We rewrote the whole city code, translated it into updated language, made it searchable, it's online. We also created this provision where we can, rather than have a criminal fine for violations, create an administrative fine process. And one of the things that does is we don't have to have a deputy write a ticket. It can be done by someone who's not a deputy. And considering the situation that we're in as a community right now, it might be timely for us to start thinking about breaking that out. And we don't have any set up right now. And this might be the one that we decide is first, or maybe parking would be the one that we decide is first.
Mhm.
And add some provisions to do that.
This sure seems a lot less labor intensive to add into city staff, garbage, you know what I mean, versus like parking, like meter maid service, like that sounds like that could be.
Well, an administrative fine doesn't mean we create an infrastructure to go out there
And search for it.
proactively enforce these things. It
Yeah.
can still be complaint-based.
Okay.
So it just gives us another tool to use rather than, here's a $200 ticket, 180 of which goes to the state of Minnesota, right? We'll have an administrative fine. It's really not even about the amount of money as much as it is about we're officially telling you this is a problem and you need to deal with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other thoughts from the commissioners?
I think that you were gone. We asked Patrick, and maybe you were gone too, but I think when we first, this was, I don't know how many meetings back that was, we were like, where did this come from? Like,
Yeah.
who sent this down? Because we didn't know what to really even talk about, right? That was the one that, there was a few other cities that
Oh.
had things.
Mhm.
But I think we were trying to figure out where it came from to identify what we would need to change. This is helpful, right? And I mean, it seems like the process of the conversation and digging was like, oh, we're actually almost there, right? I mean, this is good, I think, because we don't have to do anything, right? I mean, we're just
Yeah,
saying,
I'm not recommending you do anything.
you did this, way to go. Good job, Mike and Patrick and team, right? I mean, but, yeah, but where
I
did
think
it come from?
And it came from Tracy. She just brought it and then tossed it to me, and
She brought it to the city council.
Oh.
The city council talked about it.
Along with 2 or 3 other.
There was a
items.
couple
Yeah.
items on the list, and so once
And I
you're done
think
with
this
this,
was the
we gotta go
one-
back and talk about what you wanna do next.
Okay.
yeah. But we thought this was the one that felt like, okay,
Yeah.
we can grab this one.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there were a couple others that I can't remember right now, but,
Phil.
what was it?
Yeah.
Phil.
Filling
for-
in.
Oh, yeah.
So you can
Adjusting
build
your
your
height.
height.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, oh, that's right. We were talking about like, how would you even,
That was one.
Yeah.
yeah.
Parking.
And parking?
Was parking?
Oh, was it parking spots for building downtown? That was that
Well,
specific?
I think in general, downtown, parking,
Providing off-street parking.
yeah.
I think it may, was that
That
more of
was
a
specifically
VRBO
for
thing?
habitational or rental.
Well, I think the biggest sticking point was for short-term rentals,
Yeah.
but we don't require parking downtown at all. I'm actually okay with that. Maybe I'm weird, maybe I'm different than everybody else. That's not uncommon in downtown zoning
Right.
for a very long time now, that's been the trend, is not to require parking, because parking is not a very productive economically use of space. And so to force someone to not make that economically viable is tough. That might make more sense on a bigger area though, where there are multiple parking options. How would you determine whether there's an actual shortage of parking here? I think we'll just have, most likely people just have to agree to disagree on that. But then, more to the point about short-term rental parking, we've got an ordinance that says if you've got less than 10 units, you're not a hotel, and we don't put a bunch of additional requirements on you. You don't have to require, there's no off-street parking requirement. And we also have an ordinance that says no overnight parking all winter long, and 90-minute parking in the summertime. So those they're not compatible. Like, if someone decides, I'm just gonna let the economy figure out my parking for me, there's a lot of public spaces to park in. That's fine in July if there is parking, but in January it's not fine. If they're overnight parking somewhere and it's in a public space, we have an ordinance that says they can't do it. And if they don't have a private space, then what's gonna happen here? It's a bit of a problem that we should probably look at.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so is that something that could also be handled with this administrative, you know what I mean? Like, just thinking again of the changes that maybe, I didn't watch the meeting last week to see, but I'm assuming I know what came down with the change in enforcement, or you know what I mean, the deputy sheriff's department, like, and staffing in the city limits,
Yeah.
which we know has been a struggle with enforcement of the things that we already have, right?
Right.
I don't know, yeah, I guess I'm not trying to put a whole bunch of stuff out there, but I mean, if there was a flyer that one could print out and like put in somebody's windshield when there's like campers parked all the way downtown and like, you know, clearly camping, you know, I mean.
Our most recent big change we made was to go to calendar parking in the neighborhoods too, over the wintertime.
Yeah.
And we did that strategy. Let's create a placard we can put in a windshield that's just a reminder, hey, this is in violation of a new rule, you're gonna have to.
Get with the system.
Yeah, and it's not a ticket, and it's not an administrative fine, and we're not asking anybody to do anything, but just do a better job next time.
Yeah.
And that worked, I think, for a lot of it, but that's local people, right, who live here and can see that, and then next time adjust. We're
Right.
talking about somebody camping downtown. What do they care if they get a placard in their windshield? They're probably not coming back for a long time, so.
Yeah, all right.
I think it ends up being enforcement, and it might be that we decide administrative fine is the right strategy, just because we'll be able to do it more. I don't know whether it really solves the problem or not. Eventually,
I don't think
in
you're
the
gonna solve
neighborhoods,
the problem, but it's
No.
like. if you
well,
get deterred-
in the neighborhoods, the problem was you're in the way. Like, we're trying to plow snow and you're in the way, and the only way to solve the problem is to tow that vehicle.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it ends up getting to that place.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, which one do you want to talk about next month? You want to talk about parking downtown? You talk about fill and building heights and everything else?
Let's talk about Phil and building heights.
Sure.
I mean, we're going into.
Although I think parking might be, if
I
we're
guess
going
we're
into
leaving
winter.
both those seasons.
Right.
It's really the parking one that I think is becoming more of an issue because it's going to be winter, and that's when parking is a real problem for us.
Why did you give us a choice, Mike? Let's do parking.
Was it a real choice?
He just wanted you to
Apparently
feel
not.
like you had a
Was it really?
choice.
Apparently not.
Yeah. We could try both.
The right thing to
Well-
say is next month we're going to talk about parking downtown.
I'm interested in what you want. That doesn't mean you get it.
Okay, parking it is. It'll be very
I think
exciting.
it is.
One of the things we're also going to talk about at the council level, and I don't think we're going to spend any time here talking about it, but is the area of the downtown that is covered by our parking requirements. We've got parking requirements downtown that are different than the neighborhoods. It's calendar parking there, down here it's time parking. And there's some blocks, for instance, First Avenue East here up above the co-op, which is not included in the downtown parking list, but it's connected to downtown. It probably ought to be. And so we're going to take a look at that at a council meeting in October and just say, okay, does this map seem right? Have we covered everything the right way, or do we need to make some changes?
Yeah.
Fun.
I will. Very exciting. And with that, I would say we're adjourned. Awesome.
We're done. Thank you.
So that's a Zoom meeting tomorrow?
It is. You could at least put your earbuds in and listen to it, and if there's something